Today I present to you a curated set of photographs and videos taken in Norway. Of the 7 stops on my 2023 European Interrail trip, this is my second one where I visited Norway's capital Oslo, Lake Bessegen and Bergen with my 2 university classmates Edvard and Raghav. Lake Bessegen was particularly remote and I personally wouldn't even have considered visiting such a location had Edvard not offered to drive. Therefore, I was and am in fact grateful for that, and with that in mind, let us begin. Our first day was a full day of driving with a brief stop at Lillehammer where we had McDonald's. We then had a stop at the open-air museum where numerous houses from past centuries were exhibited. People marvel at the efforts it took the British to collect millions of antiques to the British Museum at Russell Square, but in my opinion, the effort it took to move all these houses thousands of miles in entirety is also beyond imaginable. For the remaining of that day, we travelled thousands, or I should say hundreds of kilometers by road. Though extremely boring, I was slightly amused by the fact that every now and then we would casually traverse through very long tunnels and stay in the darkness for tens of minutes, the longest one being 25 kilometers in fact. It was even more interesting when we encountered a roundabout within a tunnel, as if the mountain had a full underground network of its own, and I imagine if Norway were to be invaded, I think they could probably fit their entire population within all these tunnels repurposed as bunkers. So I wonder how painful these journeys would be if we had to travel through even more treacherous winding country roads if we didn't have these tunnels in the first place. For the next 2 consecutive evenings, we stayed at the cabin at Morvangen. It is certainly cozy and modestly sized, but well equipped with a toilet, small kitchen and a small fireplace if we did need one. It was also smartly furnished with collapsible appliances. That evening, I was blessed with sleeping on a single bed on the upper bunk while the 2 guys snugly slept side by side on a bottom bunk double bed. On the next day, we started a full day of hiking around Lake Bessegen. We woke up at 8 for a departure at 9, which was an immediate departure from a lazy holiday mood, but I expected it regardless. We then took a 40-minute walk to the ferry pier at Gendesheim for a half-hour ferry ride to our starting point at Memerubu. The ferry ride was extremely pricey, but the views were extremely iconic, if you could bear the cold from the chilling winds on the upper outdoor deck, that is. I couldn't stop taking photographs, but little did I know I would be blessed with even more breathtaking scenes throughout the day. So just to clarify before we go any further, a lake is a fully enclosed body of water above sea level, whereas a fjord is a body of water in a valley which is connected to a sea. So prior to learning the differences, or prior to Edward telling me about the difference, I was confused, as I thought both terms were just used interchangeably in Norway. At Memerubu, we embarked on the hike eastwards back to Gendesheim. Most parts of the hike were very manageable, and I would even say easier than the hikes in Hong Kong. However, there were certainly some sections that were dangerously steep rock cliffs. A rain inevitably came, but that was expected because of the Norwegian climate. If we were to approach these sections an hour later, we would have had to wait for at least 30 minutes for the rock to dry, or even worse, make a return and take the ferry. That is to say, I think we were extremely lucky that day. At the end of the day, Raghav made a remark that he would never have ever truly understood what hiking is without coming in this trip. I agree with that, and I guess that's just a testament to both the difficulty of the trek and the gorgeous landscape of this hike. So at the end of the day, though we walked at a very decent speed, we took around 6 hours, exceeding the 4 hours which was suggested by maps. Edward claimed that he would have been able to make it in a shorter time if we were hiking alone, but I suspect whether that is the case. So I asked him if he thought he was good at hiking, to which he jokingly replied, "I am not an avid hiker, I'm just Norwegian." This interesting statement stayed in my mind, and I thought it would be great to share to you all how a Norwegian thinks of his own national and cultural identity. On the 3rd day, we used a full day to drive from Lake Bessegen to Bergen with a brief pit stop at Flom, a beautiful fjord. Unfortunately, it was a tourist honey spot, so we quickly moved on. After all, there isn't too much exciting things happening at a crowded honeypot anyways. Over the course of the next 2 days, which were day 4 and day 5, we traveled around in Bergen. On the first day, we were again blessed with the authentic Norwegian weather, which is endless hours of rain. So we spent the morning walking around the harbour, looking at colourful buildings, or more so their reflections on the puddles. We then took a quick look at the Bergen House fortress, where we got to learn about the change in role of the building over time, and we also got to see the view of the harbour from it. That afternoon, we hiked from the harbour up to Mount Floyn, a hill which I would say is akin to Victoria Peak in Hong Kong. Along the way, we walked through forests of tall spruce trees, which is very different from the nearly bald mountains that we've been trekking in the last few days. Edvard also used his Norwegian wisdom to get us to try some berries, and I must admit I was skeptical at first, but when I did give in and try, I couldn't help but find it extremely delicious. As we finally reached the top, we got a panoramic view of the city. The view was initially entirely fogged in mist, but after a while the fog cleared and the city revealed itself beautifully. On the next day, we went up to Mount Floyn again, but this time we trekked towards the tallest of the peaks around Bergen, which is Mount Urken. Along the way, there were 2 goat houses, which were cute, but the fact that the goats were chewing endlessly seemed slightly demonic to me. For this trek, I wouldn't say that the views were particularly scenic, but I think that it's just that the insane beauty of Lake Bessegen has sadly made me desensitized to all this. Funnily enough, I think the best part of this trip were the vernacular up to Mount Floyn, which is very similar to the peak tram in Hong Kong, which I miss, as well as the Urken cable car which we took on the way down. I am, after all, a rail enthusiast, or by and large, a transport enthusiast. And now I realize that this monologue has extended itself unexpectedly long, so I'll bring the video to a close and leave my journey in Oslo and Copenhagen in my next video. As of right now, I am in a hostel, so stay tuned and goodbye until next time.